In this video, we will discuss the fundamentals of creating a report within the Power BI Report Builder. Here we've launched the Power BI Report Builder, and we have several options here which we can use to begin the report development. The first thing I'm going to do before I start with the Report Builder is go to my Power BI dataset. This report we're going to create will be connected to Power BI datasets, and setting up Power BI datasets begins within the Power BI desktop. The thing I would like to point out is that it is important to have a data set that can be used for parameters from which to generate your reports for households or accounts. In this case, we'll use the households as the primary parameter for creating our reports. And in order to do this, we need a table which has a unique household ID in each line of the table. In this case, I have a column here called Household Index that is a combination of the household name and the household ID, in which I know that the household index will be unique. And that is what makes this table one which I can use for a parameter. So I'm going to go back into the Power BI Report Builder. As you can see, there are options here to use wizards to create your reports. I will simply click on Blank Report. Now I will go over a couple of steps that you will need to do to create a template for your reports. The first thing is in the gray area. I'm going to right-click and select Report Properties. Depending on the layout, whether it's portrait or landscape, I have a width and a height set as defaults. If I wanted to create a landscape report, I simply click on Landscape, and now I have a report that is 11 inches wide and 8.5 inches high. Down here, I will establish my margins. The margins I'm going to establish will be 1/4 inch on the top, the bottom, the left, and the right. I'll click OK, and now I've established that this will be a landscape report. And given that I have 1/4 inch margin on each side, the room I have to work with is 10.5 inches wide and 8 inches high. I'm going to open up my Report Properties pane so I can begin to see the settings that I am now establishing for my report. And here, under the page, you can see the dimensions and the margins are shown here. Now I will go to my report. When I click on a report, the layer that I'm currently on will be shown up in the Properties pane. So you can see that when I click on this report, the body is the layer that I'm currently on. If I click into another element, that'll change. I click on the title, and the Properties pane now shows that's the layer of the report that's currently active. First thing I'm going to do is click on the body of the report, and over here, I'll change the size of the report to match with the amount of space I have to work with given the size of the report and the margins. So the width will be 10.5. and the height will be 8. I'm going to actually remove these default elements. This is an optional step, but for my purposes, I'm going to remove the title as well as the footer. The next step is I need to connect to a data source. So over here in the left-hand column under Report Data, I'm going to click on Data Source, right-click, add Power BI Dataset Connection, and that will open my workspace. I'm now connected to my data sets within the Power BI online application. The workspace I want to connect to is here, and I will connect to the data set. I will double click and select. Now that I am connected to my data source, I want to create a data set to work with. So on Data Set, I will right click and select Add Data Set. I'll create a name. I will call this Household Data. Data source is the data source we've established. And from here, I will click on Query Designer. Within the Query Designer, I will see the same data sets that I had created within the Power BI desktop. As you can see here, the data sets I had set up in the Power BI desktop are now available within the Power BI Report Builder. So I will create a data set to work with for designing a report. The first report I'll create will be from my sample accounts data set. And I can left click on my mouse pad and drag the columns I would like to use in my report over into the query editor. I can also right click and select Add to Query. So here I have the data set I would like to utilize to create my first report. The second step within the query editor is to create parameters. I'm going to choose to add parameters from here, and I'm going to go to the list I created that has unique values for my households. And I'm going to first select my household index, and I will drag it into the parameter fields, and I'm also going to select the household ID as my 2 parameters for this report. Over on the right, I will check the box that indicates that these fields should be used as parameters. I'll click OK and OK again. And now I have a data set created for the report, and I also have my 2 parameters. Now I'm going to start adding elements to my report. As you can see, if I click on the white space in the report, the properties pane lets me know that the layer that I'm currently on is the body. From the top ribbon, I'm going to click Insert, and there are several elements that you can use as primary elements or primary layers in your report. In this case, I would like to create the option for the person generating the reports to have the ability to produce a report for more than one household at a time. So the first thing I need to add to this report is a list. A list is basically a rectangle that creates the ability for generating reports for multiple entities with one process. So I'm going to click on List and come over to the report and drag my list across the body of the report. So now if I click on the white space on the report over to the right, you can see that the layer I'm on is the rectangle. If I click on the gray box to the top left, it'll indicate the layer I'm on is a Tablix. The next thing I need to do is be sure that the data set assigned for this Tablix is the household data set that I've just created. So now I can start using the fields from this data set to create elements for my report.